Hello, Internet. Thank you once again for joining me to talk all things vertical drama. I have found probably one of the most recognisable names in the spaces and also faces, because it is the wonderful Richard Sharrah, who you will have seen in a lot of wonderful verticals on your phone. Richard, please could you tell the Internet a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and how you fell in love with acting?
That was very, very nice of you to say that. Thank you so much. I actually was the one talking to you prior to hit record. Like, you're the most recognizable face. What you're doing for the whole vertical community is amazing. I think it really, really shows, and it's very telling how unique of a space that this community that we built, and how everybody is just so rapidly helping and supporting of each other. And I love it because, like, I see it in my DMs, I see it in my comments, and you're one of the faces in the forefront of that. So I'm very grateful to you. So thank you for having me on this. But my background, I guess the question was, well, how did I fall into this space? There's like different, I've answered this question a few times. I'm going to try and give you something new, like a unique perspective of it. But I think everyone who's listened to past like podcasts and interviews that I've done, they know that the famous email where I booked my first vertical, I was actually filming in the Manhattan Beach studios. James Cameron filmed Avatar there. And then famously, they did The Mandalorian too. It's called The Volume. So they have these 10-story LED walls that are like 360 surrounding you, but there's also an LED ceiling right above you too. So when you go into the soundstage, they open these ginormous, like 10-story Bombay doors, and everybody, all the cast and crew, everybody walks this long ramp to get into the volume. And then they shut the giant door behind you. So you're completely surrounded, top around everywhere 360 with LED walls. And so they have this entire section of the soundstage with a bunch of like 20 of these computer engineers that they're like, click, 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 you're on Mars. They know the Millennium Falcon is landing right in front of you. And so for my scene, I was a guest star on the show Grownish, and we were at a music festival. So instead of shipping everybody out and going to Coachella, for instance, which would cost a lot of money, they just walked us all into the volume. You're at a music festival in the desert, and it's like, it's so lifelike. It's crazy. So the tech there was just insane. But the infamous story goes that I got a ding, and I checked my phone, and my manager's like, "You just booked the Billionaires baby bargain." And I was like, "All right, that's kind of weird. That's a weird name." But in the past, it's always like saying, like, we do so many of these auditions, I self tape, and you just submit and forget about it. The healthy way is to forget about it. But a lot of people, like, you can really turn yourself kind of crazy by overthinking, like, well, do they like this? Do they like that? So you just submit it and forget it. And I'm really good at forgetting. So when I got the booking, I'm like, what? Okay, I don't even remember auditioning for this. But then I call my manager, and he's like, the first question out of his mouth is like, congrats, but what's a vertical? And this was like year and a half, almost 2 years ago. Like, this is
Mm.
before it became cool, before it was sexy. In fact, there was nothing written about it. I found, I think, like one Forbes article written about it, and it was kind of
Mm.
derogatory. It was just basically sticking its nose up to the space and just saying, ugh. But when I called the producer, obviously saying thank you and wanting to know more, they were explaining how they're going to shoot like 70 plus episodes in like less than a week. And all of a sudden, like, my brain just went like, what? How is that even possible? Because like, I'm so used to the horizontal. It's so funny now because we have the vernacular of horizontal now in vertical worlds. So I address
Yes.
the legacy media as like the horizontal space. So like in the horizontal space, when you're very aggressive and you're shooting, it's like 4 to 6 pages. Like, that's aggressive. That's a lot.
Mm.
Whereas in this one, you're averaging about 20 pages a day. And so my MBA brain was like basically going, I want to see how this is even possible, like, operations wise. So I told my manager, my agent, who actually told me, they admitted, they told me not to do it, which is very like the old way of thinking for the career minded,
Mm.
being very careful of the projects you choose. That's very
Mm.
horizontal legacy thinking. And that they admitted, because I was just like, you know what, look, if this blows up in my face, I'll take all the heat for it. But I'm just very curious. And so when I touched down, very it's how early this was and the names that have basically come out of this place. So Nani, she was my director. It was her first time doing a vertical ever. My first time doing a vertical ever. Daniela, she had done a few. So actually she was like kind of like, someone we could pull aside and be, all right, so how's this work? But then the producer, Alina, phenomenal, by the way, she's over at TikTok right now. But I sat down and was like, all right, just like give us the business model. Like, I need to understand like what's the constraints that we're going to be doing. And then, yeah, we executed the billionaire's baby bargain. Funny enough, Kirby, like, shot off, after that. And she was the sixth sister that had cancer that Danielle was trying to raise money to help cure.
Yeah.
And then, of course, us taking off our careers and stuff, I did some other things with like Mommy Don't Cry, Daddy Sorry, the kind of crazy stuff that happened. And then I saw Kirby's career take off, and I was just texting you. I was like, hey, that's so awesome. She was like she came in for one day. She was so bubbly and so cute, and then all of a sudden seeing her take off, I'm like, congrats. I'm like, I'm your biggest fan. But that was kind of like the beginning of how this whirlwind happened. It was out of nowhere. It was like curiosity was basically the only reason why I said yes. But then it's been this tidal wave. It's been this insane ride, which I enjoyed every second of.
As someone who went in, and I love that's why you were like, let's just see how this works.
Yeah.
What was the key thing that you identified is crucial to getting through that amount of pages in a day?
Speed and agility. I always use the word like velocity as like the key word. But I also noticed that because Nani came from the horizontal space as well, and it was my first time, she loved the fact that she could grab on, and we were like basically, what's that word? Like, you're tied together, the suicide vest. It's like you live or
Yeah.
die together. But she was saying, she's like, this is insane. I'm used to like 4 to 6 pages, and I was like, I know, like that's aggressive, but now we're having to do 220. So everybody had to bring their A game. You only are allowed to do like 2 or 3 takes, and it's like when some of these first time directors, whenever they get lost in the old way of doing things, where they like they get too caught up on like the shot, or too caught up in like trying to get the actor finally to that point, which might take a couple of takes in this space. We didn't have time for it. And so what was so insane was that there was a lot of trust that we gave each other. I was like, look, I know this is like, just give me the framing. Just tell me where I need to be. Cause I was so used to horizontal, we can get some freedom, but now we're so restricted in the vertical space. We're like, literally could barely move. So I kept telling her, I was like, okay, what's the framing? Give me my barriers. And then, okay, all right, I'll give you some gold. And then she would just say action. She's taking care of that side. And we would do like only 2 or 3 takes. And that's what I love the most, that I think, call it the gods are favoring us, the planets aligning. Daniela was so phenomenal too. Like she's an amazing actress. And so when you have two people that can actually bring and play varsity together with each other, you only need like 2 or 3 takes, if that. There were a couple of ones which is unheard of, especially with our first time doing this, where we only did it in one take. And so like the joke became like the one take wonder for some of us in some of our scenes together, which is like, almost death, because like the editing room, when you like constrict yourself to just one take, it's do or die. Maybe that's the running theme for the first one, is do or die.
Is there an adrenaline rush?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I love the idea that the moment when you touch down, these are 12-hour days, like, obviously with how crazy some of these scenes get, like the banquet scenes and like the big huge ones with extras and stuff. Like I remember the longest I've shot was, I think, into like the 17th or 18th hour. And that put us at 4 a.m. in the middle of the street. It was a rainy scene. And it's cold. It's cold. Like LA, it's desert. So it's like super, super hot and then super, super cold at night, especially during the winter when we shot it. It was like right before Christmas. And it's one of the epic ones where the car crash, my wife with an unborn baby is on the ground. I'm in a hospital gown. That's it. Just like pants in a hospital gown. It's like flowy and it's like 30 degrees. And guess what? It's raining too. So they're pouring down rain on you. And like, as horrible as I felt so bad for my co-star. Tori was on the ground. She's on the asphalt, freezing cold, getting rained on after she got hit by a car. And of course, it's the emotional climax. And then like, Richard, your wife just got hit by a car. Your unborn daughter's in there. They're possibly dead. All right, action. And then you're on hour 16, 18, just like, yeah, that's how intense it gets. But to be honest, I actually live for those moments. I enjoy, it's like in the athlete analogy that I always use is basketball. It's like there's people who shy away from having the ball with 8 seconds left with the game on the line. Like they'll pass it, and try to give to somebody. Like I live for those moments. I'm like, give me the ball. That's like I would love to go, not only just be the game winner and be heralded it, but the pressure, it brings out the best in me. I actually love pressure. So putting myself in those moments, let's just say the vertical space will give you plenty of those moments, high pressure moments where you have to go and then get that adrenaline rush. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because it seems that is the way to thrive in the space, that you can handle that pressure. But actually, the people who thrive are people that actually kind of love it. Like, I
Yeah,
like
exactly. I get off on
that.
it. Well, I'm maybe not all there upstairs, but
Yeah.
I love that stuff. It's like the Kobe and or the Michael Jordan. I'm like, let's go. Give me the ball.
Could you just talk as well, if it's all right, about just the sheer emotional range that you get to do in verticals? Because obviously you've described a situation there, and you know that you can have verticals that put your character, through the ringer. We if it's vertical, we don't have one thing. We have thing upon thing upon thing upon thing that's bad. But then
There you
you've
go.
also done all the way other of you've done pretty much broad humour. Does horizontal offer just such that range that you can
I
do?
actually I love that you bring that up. It's very perceptive too, because I think what normally what people love to like kind of pejoratively talk about the vertical space is that, like no one can act, like no, the plots are just like the same and like rehashes. But I would actually push back and argue that no, like what the vertical space thrives in, and especially the audience, what the audience loves is that emotional roller coaster. That emotional roller coaster is actually why the dopamine hits whenever they're going through the scrolling.
Mm.
It's what's so addictive about the space.
Mm.
But I would reverse engineer that. So in order to have something that's so emotional, triggering, or emotionally, you know, what's the right word? Oof, I'm like going for like that, right? What's so emotionally drawing, or like that draws the audience in, and it's
Mm.
almost like a drug. Is it has to be artistically justified. And so the highest of highs, whether you have like laugh, comedy, something that's so jovial, but then also you have to go down into like the depths of sorrow. So like, there's crying kids, there's like, adoption, there's like orphans that are left and abandoned. These require a range of acting that if it's not grounded in reality, it's an instant turnoff. I feel like I'm very active, and like my fans that are in my DMs keep DMing me saying that as this space matures, the requirements of actual actors is going to get higher and higher, because they can go somewhere where there's an actual actor who can actually make those beautiful decisions and make them vulnerable and make them feel real. And that's what I always argue about whenever I talk to people about this space of why it's so addicting. Because everybody always talks about this space as like, there's the theater experience, there's the TV experience of sitting on your couch with like your family or friends or loved one, but this is such an intimate experience. I'm such a data minded guy when I'm talking to fans. I'm just like, so where do you watch these? When, where? And they
Mhm.
always say at 3 a.m. alone in bed at night. And I'm like, okay, imagine this. Imagine just from like understanding your customer, or understanding like,
Mm.
the person who's using your product. It's the middle of the night. No one else is awake. It's just them and one of the most intimate settings, their own bed, lying up at night. So, like, imagine, so you now
Mm.
paint that picture in your head. The light is just illuminating this person alone in bed at night at 3 a.m. watching these things. They're laughing, they're crying, they're experiencing the whole gamut of emotions,
Mm.
especially if it's someone who's giving a performance that's based in reality and grounded. It's a very, very emotional experience, and a real one. And so now you can see whenever the sun comes up and the rest of the world wakes up, why they jump online, talk to their friends, and tell them, hey, you need to watch this because you're going to go through something like I did at 3 a.m. last night. And so, like, I almost take that as like a responsibility almost as a performer, as an artist, and as an actor. When you show up on these sets, that's who's going to be on the receiving end of these scenes. And so
Mm.
you almost take it as like, once again, that pressure, that challenge is like, can I give a performance that's grounded, that feels real, to the point where someone has that roller coaster of emotions at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, alone in bed at night? Oh my God, it is kind of like an addiction, which is what I love talking to people about the fans of this space.
Mm.
They're in the truest form. They are extremely fanatic, because it's almost like this drug that they go and they see like, oh, this performer or this artist or this actor makes me feel stuff that I don't feel anywhere else. And so that's
Mm.
why they go and search out and can't wait, DM me, message me all the time in comments saying, when's your next one come out? Once again, which is why I'm doing these interviews so much, because
Mm.
it's like, hey, don't worry, the next one comes out on Saturday and you get to see it.
Because I think the key thing you've hit on there is that it's not a casual viewer generally. I'm sure there's people who dip in and go, oh, verticals aren't for me and disappear off. But
Yeah.
generally, it all happens like me. Verticals get you, pull you
I,
in. And then
I know.
it's like, I do watch horizontal stuff, but it's rare now. And then you find yourself watching going, well, that's actually quite vertical. I think you'll find that's cut or that's the, you start seeing the influence everywhere. So I think
Yeah,
it's amazing that you're aware of that as well on the performer side, that, yeah, it does something to people and it's delivering in huge amount what people are looking for. I think that's the key, isn't it? Because of the speed you're working,
yeah,
the fans who find you, say if you were doing horizontal work, they maybe would have 1 or 2 movies a year to watch.
yep,
Thanks to verticals, they want to watch your stuff. Already there's a big back catalogue and you're going to have multiple projects out here. And that's really exciting for them.
exactly,
They can,
exactly. You want to hear a crazy story? So when Real Short very so smart. Like their marketing team is crazy. They did a publicity stunt with their PR team where they put a bunch of us, of the guys and the girls on billboards around Hollywood, and the timing was perfect. It was during the FICE events. Do you know what FICE? So it's like for
I'm
your
nodding. No,
consideration.
I have no idea. Help me out.
Yeah, sorry. So the horizontal space, the old typical legacy media way of
Mm.
going and campaigning for awards, they call them FICE events. They call it for your consideration. So this was the timing of the Emmys. And if you have a show that's on FX or a show that's on Hulu or a show that's on ABC, CBS, you name it, you do your own little PR blitz where you put billboards all over Hollywood, try to get in front of any voters, and then you'll even host FICE events where you'll do private screenings, maybe invite someone from the trades like THR, the Hollywood Reporter, or something to basically moderate your panel. You talk to the actors or something, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, it's a business. It's a business in and of itself
Wow.
going for awards. But what's so smart, what Real Short did was like, we're not going for the Emmys, but we're just going to put up our own billboards during the same time that FICE events are happening. And I remember when I was talking to the marketing team about it, I was like, oh, brilliant, brilliant. I can't wait to see blatantly in front of you the difference between the horizontal space and the vertical space. So when we got put up on the billboards, I have friends that actually are series regulars on shows that were actually on the billboards themselves during the FICE events. And I was teasing them. And I was like, how many people on your social media were tagging you and saying, hey, I just found him, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, in the vertical space, how many fans of the vertical space were going around Hollywood, literally like a scavenger hunt, basically saying, oh my God, I found Richard. They would take a picture of it, tag me, tag my family, and then go crazy on social media and then tell their friends to go find me. But then they would also treat it as like, this game. So they were like, I was like, oh my God, I found Seth. Oh my God, I found Jesse. Blah, blah, blah. They take pictures and pictures of all of us and they would just basically group us all together. And we were like trending on social media. And we weren't even going for awards.
It's such a
But
cool scavenger hunt, though. I love
I
it.
know. Isn't that crazy? Because I had people like messaging me saying, I'm flying in from Africa. I'm flying in from South America. I'm flying in from anywhere you name it in the world. And they're like, I'm in LA. Where's your billboard? Like that's the amount of like, fanaticism of these fans that is so, so unique to the vertical space. They've never had anything like this from Western audiences and like a perspective. They can't put against anything. There's no comp for it because it's this whole new level of fanaticism that they've never seen before.
I was trying to think, like, can you compare it? Because obviously you've mentioned Avatar as like, that's probably the closest I can think of, either sort of gaming or sci-fi communities, but I don't know how global that is, because that's always the thing that struck me with verticals of it's global. It's
Right.
every country in the world.
Exactly. So, but that's the one thing that I saw personally when like the Altadena fires happened and the Pacific Palisades was just so horrible last year. I was getting DMs and they would say, "Hey, I'm from Germany. Hey, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm from Cambodia. I'm from Laos." They were saying, "I'm from South Africa. How are your kids? I saw on the news that the LA has fires. Like, are you safe and okay?" They were literally calling out my kids by name. Like it was crazy. But these fans, it's a global audience. Immediately, I could see that with my own eyes because it's in my own TMs. Whereas the Western stuff, the horizontal space, they're very, very domestic oriented. And
Mm.
then they think global. It's almost like an afterthought. Whereas the verticals is the complete opposite. It's a global audience first. And then they start pocketing and like targeting the different, local audiences, which is insane to me. Because even when I've pitched TV shows in the past, there's a very myopic kind of like singular tunnel vision like view of who your audience is whenever you're trying to sell and pitch in the horizontal space. Whereas in the vertical, it's just understood it's global right from the.
I love that. It's just thinking a lot bigger, isn't it? And it's worked. Where has it worked?
Yes, yes, yes.
So, a question you mentioned, see, when you first got cast in a vertical, I
Yeah.
think you were doing what I was doing. You're looking for info online, and there was one or two articles, and that was it. Obviously,
Yep.
that has totally changed. And I think you were one of the real short stars in the People magazine shoot. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, they put me in People. That was a phenomenal experience. They put us all together in a room and they did so much BTS, but it was just us having a good time. Like it's so rare because we each basically are the leads in our own shows that you get us all to the only time we ever get to interact with each other is at red carpet events. So like those special photo shoots that happen. And they didn't even tell us at the time it was for people. It was like the secret. It's all we had was just like, a message, meet here. There's gonna be a photo shoot. And then we just get to hang out with like, we're all close with each other, the leads. And then boom, they put on People. And it was like this crazy, crazy whirlwind. It was cool. It was very much like, I'm not gonna try and be humble and be like, oh, whatever. But like, it was cool. It's one of those things where it's like those defining moments where it's like, oh yeah, that was awesome. It felt good. And then, yeah, now it's starting 2026, fresh off of being in People magazine. It's nuts. It's nuts.
I just love that they didn't tell you. I think that's so cool. So that you actually got the genuine, oh, what? So, I mean, that
I
could
know.
have been whatever
I
it
know.
was. That's so
I
cool.
know.
Has it surprised you how quickly it's gone from no articles to People magazine? Just the sheer
I think
pace of that.
that's it. That's a very double-edged sword with how I'm going to answer this. From the moment that I touched down and realized the business model for the Billionaires Baby Bargain, I called my manager, and he can attest to this. And I was like, "These guys are going to take over the world." I said it because I was like, they have an insanely tech-focused take on how virality works. But then also they have data scientists that just basically pour over the data of where people fall off on these cliffhangers and the paywalls and the retention rates and how people actually finish an episode or not, or finish a series. And I think it was early in the business model where it was costing almost like 40-ish bucks to finish one series.
Mm.
And then I went back to my manager and I was like, they don't even own, it's not a DVD, but they're paying 40 bucks to finish my series. And when people were DMing me just doing like, back of the napkin math, I was just like, you're like, hey, I loved your series. You're amazing. This was so amazing. And I'm just like, 45 bucks, 45 bucks, 45. Like, oh my God. It's like these people that
Mm.
there's a whole, where Katzenberg, for instance, with Quibi failed miserably. And there's many reasons we could talk for 2 hours about why that was a failure. But there was something that was so unique that one of his quips, whenever he got angry at, like, the reporters saying he was burning through hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money and just wasting it. And he got angry and he's like, well, there's certain parts of the world where they just can't afford it. Whereas I'm like, this completely proved it wrong. In fact, they're spending almost USD money more than most people would spend in America to finish one series, let alone do a monthly subscription. And so I
Mm.
was like, hey, these guys are cooking with gas. They have the ability, because a lot of these like founders that start these apps, they come from mobile gaming. So they know how virality works, how to talk to their audience, and they're extremely data driven. And so when they see things that work with the data, they'll reverse engineer it and put it into the scripts, how they execute, how the setups are as far as the shooting goes. And I you could feel the rumblings whenever I saw that with my own eyes. I was like, oof, if they continue at this pace, it's going to be insane what they can do. And as I saw it rise, even my manager and my agent at the time that were like, against their best wishes, I did it, and then called them back saying they're going to take over the world. And they're like, "Oh my God, Richard, he drank the Kool Aid. He like we let him go on this thing, and all of a sudden he's a believer." And I was like, "Yeah, they still call me out on that." And they're like, "You called it. You called it." I mean, they were doing it correctly. They did it, and they operate like a startup. So there's like the big legacy players. You can almost imagine like the analogy of like a ginormous Titanic ship, where if the
Mm.
bureaucracy, all the BS, and like once again, don't get me started on that. We can talk about the 3 hours. But whenever they make a decision, if they make a decision, I'm being very pejorative when I say that, but it's like it's going to take months, years in order to like change the boat and change the direction and the speed of what they're going.
Mm.
Whereas in the vertical space, these are very lean, young, low numbers startups. So what they do is they fail fast, reiterate and iterate and evolve and adapt and move extremely quickly and pivot fast. And that's exactly what they did. And so, I mean, anybody who can look at it from 30,000 feet was going to say, who's the nimble startup that goes like this? And then these ginormous boats with like, bureaucracy and, people that take forever to do
Mm.
anything. Yeah. I'm actually surprised it wasn't faster.
I love that. And I think you're so right because I've really noticed that because I know I'm aware a lot of legacy media companies are now looking at verticals, but the challenge
Yep.
they've all got now, there's all this paralysis because one, there's the endless chain of decision making, but also they've all got this weight of, oh, the brand and us saying that we're doing that. And what does that mean? So that's another load of chain decision making. And yeah, for me, it's so similar to the business world where I come from of like, yeah, you have a small startup, small team, go in, move fast, and you don't have that weight of a decision and brand, and you can build your own and make it what you want. So, I mean, that's partly why I'm so excited about that because I love that. That just like, I
I
love
think,
that kind of, it brings people who want opportunity and are like problem solvers and they're like, we're just going to make this happen.
I think you'll like this story. I'm trying not to get in trouble by telling you this story,
Don't get in
but
trouble, Richard.
yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be very careful. There's, let's just say, said executive from the vertical space. They know that,
Mm.
like, I had relationships, I pitched TV shows in the past, so I know a lot of like the executives in the horizontal space. And so there is a panel that they did. Obviously, recently they're getting more attention, so they're going to put on these panels with old legacy players like Sony, MGM, Warner
Mm.
Brothers, Paramount, blah blah blah, you name it. So after a panel, obviously the panelists always exchange numbers and say, "We should grab lunch. We should do this." Blah blah blah. So the executive from the vertical space went straight to me, and she's like, "Oh, they reached out to me. Like, they said they want to grab lunch. Give me like your 2 cents." And of course, once again, I could talk for 3 hours about this, but I was like, you know what? I'm not going to say stuff, horrible things. I'm not going to blah blah blah. Waste your time. I was like, how about let's
Mm.
just do this? I want you to start a timer. Just start a timer. And I bet you it's, let's just find out how long it takes to have a lunch. Days go by, weeks go by, months go by, and they still haven't scheduled a lunch. They're basically saying, "Oh, I'll kick it off to this team. My assistant will take care of this. Oh, I'm going to be out of town. You know what? Can we just like, bump this, bump this, bump that?" There's always some BS excuse. And then I was
Mm.
just like, this is just a lunch and it can't get done in a matter of months. They're not doing a
Mm.
co-pro. They're not doing strategy. They're not even getting the lawyers involved. They're not even thinking content. It's just a lunch. And yet you can't do it in a matter of months. Now imagine
Mm.
anything that these guys can do who actually has to do some impact or actually creative decisions, let alone getting the lawyers involved and stuff. And so it's just like that. I mean, the sad reality is that the medium, the horizontal space and legacy media that I fell in love with, I grew up falling in love with and then devoted my life to. It's almost like a nostalgia thing as you watch it burn itself alive. They're shooting holes in their own boat, and it's self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah. Well, my phrase that I use is Netflix taught us to binge and then stop providing content to binge.
Yeah.
Because I always think of like, so I always people ask about viewers, and I'm always like, okay, there's similar stuff, Virgin River, I would say similar kind of audience, Bridgerton, similar audience. But when you finish 10 episodes, you're then like 2 years later, you still haven't got the next slot. And obviously, life's really hard. It's like, I'm not twiddling my thumbs for two
Oh
years.
my God,
I
yeah,
need to
exactly.
do something else. And that's where I think people have gone to verticals, and verticals have totally fixed that. Like, you want to binge? You can binge. Here you go.
Yeah, you can binge a lot. And in fact, if you fall in love with the performer that brings the heat, so to speak, and you
Mm.
like, have that emotional roller coaster, guess what? He's got 4 in the pipeline already. It's speed and velocity. It's a good thing. It's actually a good thing.
Before we come on to the new project, which is kind of why we're here, I just want to ask you a little bit about storylines as well. So obviously that's one of the sort of the things that people are, oh, it's just billionaires and werewolves. Now, also, I object to the just. There's nothing wrong with billionaires and werewolves. Like, look at romance novels. That works very well. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's worked very well for verticals. And I think that will always be there. But what we have seen in the past year, 2025, and I'd say particularly at Real Short, is a real attempt to widen out and sort of tell different stories and sort of bring in a wider range of viewers. What's your view on how you've seen, I guess, just sort of settings and stories and
Oof.
scripts widen out and verticals?
Okay, I'm gonna give you a very unique perspective on this. So my obsession with finding the origin stories and like the beginnings of any of these things, especially being one of the faces riding the tidal wave of the vertical space. You get asked a lot, especially from old friends in legacy media.
Mm.
They're like, "How did you know?" Blah blah blah. Like, it's crazy. Like, you were in People magazine, especially when the
Mm.
People magazine thing came out. Like, that's when everybody was in my DMs. And my obsession was, how did this locomotion, like, how did this train start? And I've heard different stories, but a lot of people will actually look back and say that it originated in China with like it's almost like the Western equivalent is book talk. There are these like, amateur
Mhm.
sites and stuff where people can put stories and like their own little like, authorships and books, either sell it for like $1 or like, it's just basically amateur writing, but they put them online and then some of them take off. And then there was this wealth of IP that these companies would look at and then all of a sudden draw from, and then they would visualize it. If there was enough numbers, once again, the number crunching, if the data scientists and engineers said is like it crossed the threshold of,
Mm.
I think there's a big enough audience for this, then they would go and shoot a vertical version of it and they would start releasing them and they took off like wildfire there. And then they brought that kind of, business formula to the Western world. But I did hear a very interesting story that I've actually never told before. So I think you'll be the first one to hear this. So one of the producers who originated from one of the biggest companies in China, I was talking to her online from Shanghai. So we were on Zoom and just chatting. And she gave me the craziest story that I've heard as far as like, how this originated. and why you have these kind of fantastical, crazy storylines. Because I asked her that too. I was like, so what is the origins of, like, why is it always a CEO billionaire? Like, why is it always alpha? Da, da, da. So during COVID, when there were big, major, like, blockbuster movies being shot in China, the same lockdowns that happened all across the world happened in China. But you have these productions with all of these, when I say above the line, below the line workers,
Mm.
so like crew, like grips, electricians. And so when the above the line workers on like a big major blockbuster and stuff, like right before China did the lockdown, they would all go back home to their families. But the below the line workers, they just got stuck with all of this equipment, and they got stuck at these like hotels, like places, wherever you want, where they were shooting these blockbusters, and they just got locked in. And so you have all of these grips, electricians, below the line workers, usually guys, and they're all in a room just being like, oh, we have all this equipment. What'd be funny is if like you were like a CEO billionaire and like, every hot girl fell in love with you. Like, let's just shoot. And they just start shooting like these like almost, you could almost say like dumb concepts. It's like, you're a billionaire, man. Yeah, that's awesome. So let's go grab like the hottest girls in love with you now because you're billions. Or like, you know what?
Mm.
Make you just like, they try to like play with these different scenarios, and they're just shooting these things and then releasing them online because they're stuck. They're in lockdown. And I was like, oh my God, I think that's it. Like that's like this weird, necessity breeds ingenuity, where all of a sudden you have these guys that are just stuck and bored, and they have all this film equipment, and they just start making each other laugh and try to film stuff. And I'm like, I think that's it. That's great. That's a great origin story for this thing. So essentially, what happened is that the Eastern audience, well, I guess we can separate them. In the Eastern audiences, it was very male centric at first. So that's why you have like these males that are propped up and have like CEO billionaires, or like, they're these alpha kings, or like, that
Mm.
these quintessential meaning of like what it means to like, in like, that eye of like an alpha man. And they're drawn to, and like, a love dive with these girls. Whereas in the Western audience, it was more women centric, women focused.
Mm.
Like the audience that they went after first was the women. And so that's what's so interesting about me being in the space and seeing in my own DMs, the women that reach out to me and talk to me in my DMs and talk about what stories they love and the things that they fall in love with in the vertical space. It's very, very women centric with these storylines and stuff for the vertical space for the Western audiences. Where actually I'm starting to see with like the moving trend right now in 2026 and later, I think they're actually pivoting and like moving as well to open up the aperture and expand market share with male centric storylines now. And so it's almost the reverse of what happened in China. So in China, it was
Mm.
guys
Mm.
first, girls next. Was on the Western audiences, it was women first, and now they're going after the guys.
I love.
I just found that out, so that was something that was so cool for me to find, and I feel like sharing that with you, I feel like you would appreciate too. It's like I'm obsessed with trying to find out the story of how this entire whirlwind like started. And I thought that that was a funny, but then also I was like, I could see that. That checks.
I love that because all I've got so far was COVID, and I hadn't got that next step of, but that makes total sense. And is also a better use of time than what everyone around here did, which was just decided to make sourdough bread. But, that has not
That-
changed the world. What they did changed the world. So, yeah. So you've had some huge successes in 2025. Just out of interest, what are the one or two shows that people reach out to you most about that obviously resonated for them?
the biggest one now, I think we're up to upwards of 250 million plus now, but it's the Mommy Don't Cry, Daddy is Sorry. That's the one where not only did my socials go crazy and blow up, there's fan accounts
Mm.
for verticals, like vertical fan accounts, like they do reviews and everything like that.
Mm.
Their profile pic sometimes is Mommy Don't Cry, Daddy is Sorry. So it's always like I become the face of the vertical world. Like it's hilarious to me
Yeah.
to see that. And my wife eats it up. She thinks it's so funny. And then all of a sudden, that was the one where I was getting stopped in LA during my normal,
Oh.
like, errands for the day, like stopping by
Mm.
CVS even, or like, going somewhere, getting a Starbucks. And the people behind the counter would be like, did you like, did you like not know who your daughter was? And I just start laughing. And like, 'cause they were just like, of course, like me, I'm obsessed. My fans who are like, in my DMs, they know that I like love talking to them. And I'm like, so where did you find it? How did you fall into this space? Cause I'm just so data, like,
Mm.
obsessed. But I always ask that whenever they recognize me. I'm like, so yes, it's me. It's like, Mommy Don't Cry, Daddy is Sorry. I take a picture with them. But then I'm like, all right, I'll take a picture only if you answer me a question. How did you find it? How did you find
Mhm.
this thing? And most of the time they say they're on Facebook. So these ads that they do and they put them on social
Um,
media, very, very amazing tactic. The bait and switch, not bait and switch, but just the baiting, where they literally put the first 10 episodes for free. The full fledged series is on there. And like I told you earlier with the data science that they have, these first 10 episodes, they are cooking. They get you hooked. They set up the plot. They have emotional stakes that are high, and they get you wherever you are, wherever you're scrolling, whether you're waiting for your bus at a bus stop, whether you're waiting for something like, picking up your kids, even like you're like in the carpool lane or whatever. Anywhere that you're at, you get drawn in, and then at the emotional climax, that cliffhanger, boop, they're like, "All right, if you want to watch the rest of it, you got to go and download this app and jump in." And that's what she was teasing me about, the cashier at CVS. She was like, "You got me! Oh my god, I just was like, I needed to know which one was your real daughter." And of course, I gave her a big hug, and I was just like, "Yeah, like I love the fan. I love how fanatic they are. Like we were talking about earlier. There's this sense that I mean, you don't get that from like Horizon. Like I've done ABC pilots, I've done movies, I've done like the response that you get, like, oh, this is like, the meter, it just like very like bubbled up and then just drops.
Mm.
Whereas like you do one of these, and if you do it right when it hits, like you're literally redlining. Like these people, they fall in love with you. Like essentially. I mean, I just reposted today the Billionaires Baby Bargain. There was a fan that ran across the Billionaires Baby Bargain, and she wrote this entire thing, tagged me, tagged Real Short, saying like his performance was amazing. I loved it. It was moving, and like that was my first one. That was like over 2 years ago. But she just like crossed like happenstance across it, and
Mm.
then had this visceral reaction. I think that's what's so beautiful and unique about these. And I love them. Like anybody who tries to talk pejoratively about them, I just destroy them. One, you have no idea what you're talking about. Two, you don't understand it because you've never seen one. I think that's the biggest thing.
Mm.
There's like I don't know if I get too revealing. So the SAG, for instance, like the union, they just jumped in line and they're trying to do like these different agreements now because they're saying that verticals are the only thing that are actually paying actors bills right now. It's the only thing shooting in
Mm.
LA. Literally the only thing shooting Atlanta too. That's a whole other side for like, discussion about how depressing Atlanta is because it used to be this like hub where they would film the Avengers, Man of Steel, like Stranger Things, and now it's completely dead. And so all those people, the only thing that can pay the mortgage now is verticals. But whenever they enter into the space, they don't really understand it. They don't know it, but they just know that there's money to be made. And so they kind of
Right.
put their hand in the cookie jar. And there's different consultants that they've had basically run and like basically go back and forth with these agreements, so to speak. And in these closed rooms, there's very direct questions being asked, whereas the fact that when the SAG executives, whenever they speak pejoratively of it, but then also try to say, where's our cut, you know, then then the logical follow-up question would be like, well, hold on a second. Do you even know about these? Like, have you even downloaded an app? Have you even watched a
Mhm.
vertical? And of course, they start backpedaling. They're like, well, like as you can see, like I don't know. And of course, it's not anybody with any actual say in the space. It's always some assistant that's there just to take notes. And
Mm.
it's kind of sad because it goes back to the very thing that I was telling you about earlier. The frustrations that I have with the legacy media is that their disdain and like the looking down their nose and almost like the snobbery that happens whenever they have a new entrant that came in and disrupted them.
Mm.
It's literally by their own making.
Mm.
And then
I
yet
have.
the very thing that they could try to work with, they won't.
Mm. It's an interesting attitude I've seen of, oh, well, it's an incubator.
You know?
It's an incubator of talent, of writers, crew, actors that then we might deign to bring into that, which I don't know. I just think that's sort of telling about the attitude that word's used a lot. It's an incubator of talent. Yeah,
Okay,
I
I was
just
like,
like,
how long in this interview do you want this to be?
yeah, I just thought you might enjoy that one.
I know I could get very okay, yeah. It's like you can set me
So yeah,
off, or I could be very nice and be like, yeah, I guess, yeah, yeah.
I think we'll just leave that there for the audience to, yeah. Anyway, so I need to ask you about your new show, which
Yeah, yeah,
is
exactly.
Daddy, I'm Your Lucky Star. Richard, you got in touch because you said this is something the vertical space hasn't seen.
Yes.
Please, could you
So
expand upon that statement with what you're allowed to say?
is that what I'm allowed to say? I was like, whew. Okay, so first off, what people have very, very much responded to, I actually would argue that I think this is the first one. Maybe I don't know about the Eastern audiences before, but like in the Western audiences, at least perspective, is that a father and son are actually working on the same vertical. So my son Maverick, he's 8 years old now, but he was cast. I
So
made him
cute.
do like it's so fun. Exactly. So there's already some social media that I've posted with him, kind of like poking and like, making fun of the fact that like father son are working on a vertical
Mm,
together. And it just went like wildfire. Like, I think it was like 5 million views in less than a week or something. Everyone was just
mm,
like, oh my God, it's him and his actual son. That's going to be crazy.
mm.
And so like that whirlwind of having not only like a family genre vertical that's unique and
Mm.
special, but there's actually, family members in it that are, together. So it's like, I think Maverick did an amazing job. And like, I'll tell you a very funny anecdote about that is that whenever they first reached out, because when they were doing the renderings and they were actually like thinking about casting it at first off, because of the success of Mommy Don't Cry, Daddy Sorry, obviously, like, they had me, but then they had these characters of a son who was, had an issue. And then there was a daughter, the lucky star, essentially, the character played by Cherry. And they were like, hold on a second, Richard has kids. Like, that looks just like, Maverick and like also his daughter too. And so they reached out and they said, hey, would you mind, like, do you think like, it'd be cool if like Maverick was in one? And I was like, ask him. I was like, no, that's me. I was like, I'm not a theater dad, so like, I'm not gonna push
Mm.
it. But I asked him, I was like, you think you want to be in one of those things that daddy does, like a vertical and stuff like that? And the funny answer is that his first answer was like, I just want to play baseball, dad. And in our family, I always say it's like you're not allowed to just shoot something down without trying it first. You have to try it. You have to try it.
Mm.
And then you can say from experience if you liked it or not. And so that was just something where it's like, all right, just audition for it. If you hate it after that, I'll let it go. I'll let it die. And so I actually would argue that that's why he did so well. It's because he didn't have nerves or it wasn't this pressure in order to book it
Mm.
that he just didn't care. So I was like, you just memorize these lines and then just act truthfully under imaginary circumstances. Like as simple as that sounds, very
Yeah.
hard for people to do. Very, very hard for people to do. And he goes up and does it, and the casting director and the director were just like, he's great. If you want, yeah. And then of course I told him, I was like, well, you booked it. Do you want to do this? And he's like, all right, whatever. Shows up on set, has an amazing. Of course, if you ever have the chance to be on a set, I think that's the fastest way to make someone fall in love with the entire process of filmmaking. It's such a unique place. It's such a unique, special place. And I actually argue that, like, once again, like we could talk for hours about like my love affair with this entire process of making movies has been something I've seen. There's nothing quite like it anywhere else in the world. And that was something that I was so cool to see from my son's perspective. Whenever he touched down on a set and you get greeted by, the first AD, they give you a PA, and then all of a sudden you're escorted around, like you get hair and makeup, put on your wardrobe. The thing that blew him away the most was it's like I took him over to Crafty and I'm like, "Here you go, whatever you want, you can eat." And his eyes go big. It's like in a vertical where they see all the food and he's like, "This is all for me?" And I'm like, "Don't overdo it, buddy, but yeah, you can have whatever you want." And so he just starts taking stuff and ripping it up,
Yeah.
like eating and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, of course he fell in love with the whole process. And it was really, really cool to see from such a new, like, fresh perspective as like my son. And then being on set and working with him was like definitely a bucket list moment. It was so cool. It was cool. And he was great. He did phenomenal. He was a natural.
Oh, I love that. How is it as well? Because obviously that's a bit of a dynamic for them bringing in obviously Charing as well. So kind of how does that work? So
I
obviously,
can't I
yeah.
can't say enough about sharing because these these verticals where they put me with the kids, they can either make, let's just be nice and just say they can either make the show or break it. And so especially
Mm.
when you get the theater moms or theater dads involved and stuff too, then it just turns into a ginormous mess. And so I'll give it to Real Short. I'm like, thank you so much. Like they do their audition process, whatever they're doing, it's perfect because they find the most talented, most amazing kids and bring them on these sets. So Channing, for instance, I grew up with my mom watching Shirley Temple movies. So my mom would like always play and then would order us Shirley Temples at restaurants as kids because she would watch, Shirley Temple herself, like on all these, movies
Mm.
and stuff. So I grew up with like that musical, like this little girl that can dance, this little girl that is basically a triple threat and like, quadruple threat, like whatever you name it,
Mm.
anything that you need her to do, she can do. And I was like, when I read the script and I saw what was happening, I was like, oh my God, you're gonna have to find Shirley Temple. I was like, this is gonna be impossible. I was just like, oh, good luck. I mean, I was making fun of the producer, the casting director, and stuff like that. And I was just like, good luck. That's gonna be a tough. And what did they do? They literally found Shirley Temple 2.0. Sharing is
Um,
phenomenal.
mhm.
I like that. There's no other word to describe her. When she showed
Mm.
up on set, all of her lines are memorized. She's ready to go, and she leads the entire show. It's
Mm.
essentially a Shirley Temple movie where it's the buck stops with her. And when she showed up, like she killed it. And I was sitting there looking, and of course, I always love teasing and joking around with the kids on set and stuff like that. And like she would show up and stuff, and I was like, "All right, you got my lines right, like because I'm not even off book." And she's like, "Richard, you got to be responsible. You got to know your line."
I love that.
And of course, everybody's laughing on set and stuff, and just like Cherry's like reprimanding Richard because he doesn't know his lines. So it's like, yeah, it's so. And like, I love, I always take responsibility with like, especially on these like, family genre ones with the kids. I always feel like, if you're number one on the call sheet means like you set the tone for the set, and it can either be a lot of fun and an amazing place to like collaborate and make art, or I've heard horror stories of other people, you can be a menace. You can be, like, this like, an intrusion and an impediment to the artistic process. And it's just miserable and make it miserable for everyone, like above the line, below the line, like everyone just hates it. Whereas on this set, it was so much fun. We were having so much fun. It was a blast. And then of course my son, maybe I didn't do a good job of trying to show him like being professional because he's just like dad's joking around, Maverick's joking around, and then Sharing's joking around. Obviously, like deliver an amazing performance, and then all of a sudden cut happened, and then we're cracking jokes, and everyone's just having a good time. And I think that as much as like as fun as that is, I would actually always argue that you still end up seeing that camaraderie. You see that familial like love that everyone has on these sets in front of the screen. I think
Mm.
whether you can pinpoint it or not, I
No.
actually would argue you can feel it. You can feel it. There's a famous theater director. I forgot. Oh man, it was like of course the Tish. We were learning about this stuff, but I
Mm.
never forgot what he said. He's like, when I want my audience to have an inner smile when they watch my shows, and that stuck with me. Oh my god, I was like, that's such a great like almost mission or like mantra to have when you're doing
Mm.
any performance, is that your audience will have an inner smile when they see you. And I was like, that's I feel like that's the best way to describe what's going to happen when you watch this show. There's such an amazingly beautiful story to this where you will have that inner smile, but you're going to have the highest of highs, but also the lowest of lows, like you would expect from any vertical.
Mm.
Like, yeah, but delivered in a way that is extremely grounded and beautiful, realistic, painfully sometimes. I know you're gonna go through it when you watch this. I think what was her name? Like Melly, for instance. So one of the fan accounts that's very active in my DMs. She always said anytime she sees my face on a thumbnail, she's like, "Oh God, here we go. Rich is gonna put me through it." It's like I'm gonna laugh, I'm gonna cry, I better get the tissues ready. And so yeah, like that. But that kind of response from the fans is very, very cool. Of course, first off at face value,
Mm.
but then also it shows that like you're making a performance and doing a performance that moves people to have the entire gamut of emotions. And there's nothing better that you can receive from a fan base that loves you because you put them through it. You know what I mean?
I put them through it. My job is done. I love that. I think you're
Exactly.
really right about people can see on screen as well. So I remember having a chat with some producers who were like, why do you stop watching verticals? Because obviously that's what they want to know. Like, is it logic? It's like, yeah, logic's not a problem. Like, if I'm in verticals, that's already gone out the window.
Yeah.
Things that I'm more likely to turn off are if it's too slow or lack of chemistry, lack of connection between the leads. And that comes across. I mean, years ago, I used to inspect shops and, well, just kind of go around and help different teams. And you can walk in a shop and tell if that team gets on or not. Like, you can instantly tell with the
Yeah.
atmosphere. And I
Yeah.
imagine it's like that with the set. You can walk on and you can tell if it's vibing or not. I have to ask, okay, so you have a vertical that not only are you starring in with your son, not only are you starring in with not a son, but two child leads.
Yep.
There's also a dog on the poster, Richard.
Yep.
I,
So
I'm like, for anyone who had
yeah,
to never work with children or animals, you've
there's only
gone,
so
woo!
much, like my hands are tied. There's only so much I'm allowed to talk about, but let's just say they do reference it in the trailer, so I can say this. They're like, "Do you have powers?" So, and there is an owl that says something in the trailer, so you can already start putting together. Hold on a second.
Interesting. And yeah, okay. Yeah, right. We're going to leave it there. I just think it's phenomenal that you are doing all of them. So obviously you're really excited about this. Are there any other projects coming up that you can kind of tease for us as well? Or is it very much watch the space?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll jump on another one of like, these interviews and stuff at the fan accounts
Yeah.
and look for the other ones in the future because there's definitely ones coming in the pipeline. And there's a big one actually in the pipeline that I would love to talk to you about. Like we'll run it back because this was fun. This was great. I love your questions. You got me going, but we can go off on
Good.
one of our tangents a lot deeper. But for this one, I can't explain to you enough. If you love verticals,
Mm,
this is definitely one that takes the best and the best from everything and puts it all together in one. I think it's going to be. I think that not only is it going to be a smash hit, but I think for all the right reasons. I think
mm,
it's going to be something that moves you. It's going to be something that's compelling. It's a brand new, fresh storyline that, I've heard some rumblings that people are saying it's like, it's enough with the CEOs and the alphas. Like, I need something new. This delivers on all levels.
mm,
And I think that you will have, when you watch this, that inner smile that theater director was talking about. I think it's something that is so unique and so special about the vertical space and so unique and special about this particular one.
mm.
And I think that all of your viewers, everyone's going to love it. Hit me up and DM me. Tell me like why you love it. Cause like I said, I'm such a data nerd. It's like, tell me why. And like, I promise I'll try to answer everybody as I can, but this one was special. You can feel it in the air. I'll leave you with this. I think when people who are outside of the media entertainment world, like, look at it from an outsider, they don't understand what happens and like the alchemy that happens when you're on set.
Mm.
When, when there's a take that as emotionally as like, fulfill and is as like as beautiful performances where people are crying or an intense, I guess that's the right word, is like as intense as it is when it's done and it's performed realistically grounded with like, 100% vulnerability. I swear to you, the molecules in the air change. And there's something to it whenever there's a scene where me and Sharing have one of those, like I said, there's many, one of those beautiful moments where the molecules in the air change on a take. And people at Video Village, that's the place where everyone congregates to watch the monitors, they're crying.
Mm.
And I feel like, how is it that when you have actors and performers that are on a stage and you're physically on a set, it's not real. There's lights, there's cameras, everyone's all up and in there, but then yet after a take is done, you look back and the director's crying, mom. So my wife was there to like obviously, as the mother to my son, but then also Charing's mother was there, and they're all just crying. Once again, there's no place like that anywhere else.
Mm.
And I think like that's the drug, at least for me, being a performer and being an actor and loving creating these, is that who else gets to go to work and change the molecules in the air to the
I
point.
love that. No, that is amazing. I just can't thank you enough because you've been so insightful and thoughtful with all your answers and shared a lot, and
Thank you,
hugely,
thank you.
hugely appreciate it. And also, you're just such an advocate for the medium because I think everyone benefits as it all grows.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yes, everyone, if you haven't already made a note, make a note, go and watch this. If this is already out, go and watch it. It's all good. And yeah, contact Richard because he wants to hear from you. He'll want to
Oh,
know what bit
if
you
you
love
up,
the best.
yeah, anywhere, all socials. It's just my name right here. Where is it? Richard Sharrah. There you go. Perfect.